Hey guys, my name is Loco, the better looking host of Listen Loco, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Reflections. And my guest for this one is going to be Guilhoto, who is a veteran coach in League of Legends from Europe, specifically from Portugal. Actually, here's what I wanted to do at the beginning. I actually thought instead of like building out from the beginning, we'll start at the end, basically, which is... It's kind of weird that I said that, isn't it? You're a veteran now, mate. You've actually been on esports quite a long time. You've been like 7, 8 years at this point. You've got a family, you've got a kid, it's been your job. Because I always think even when you started in esports, no one could really think it'd be like a full-time job or something. It's like, you do it for a couple of years, you hope it goes well. I mean, essentially, if things go great, like maybe you could do this 20 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird environment that we live in, right? I never know when it's the last year.
Sure.
We've been through a lot of ups and downs. I mean, you've been in esports much longer than I have, because I believe I've been before League even existed.
Yeah.
So you know that like at the end of the year, there's always some stuff that you think, okay, this is going to boom, and then on a different year, this is going to end. So I just take 1 year at a time, but I did not expect that I'm about to be 30 and I'm still doing this as my job, and especially like that I'm still loving it, right? Because it's really easy to lose it, and I'm just grateful that I didn't yet.
Do you think that you actually, like, there's some people I know in esports, maybe they'd only say this privately, but they do just do it for a job. I mean, spoiler, there's certain players that would tell you that privately. But do you think, is it your passion? Do you think it sort of has that aspect in your life?
Yeah, I think so, because even before esports, I was coaching. So you know that I was coaching basketball. So to me, just the competition and coaching in general is just what I love more than like I don't know. It's like I love the job, but it's more the competition and just that thrill and the game itself. I don't think that I'll be able to transition into a different game, and it's just I just didn't lost it. I think I would be very honest with myself if I lost it, because now with wife and kids and the ability to already like build a life outside of esports, I think if I didn't like it or if I didn't love it, I wouldn't be doing this, because in terms of stress and workload and all that is just way too much compared to what I'm at least earning right now. Not before. I mean, North America pays really well, but now for sure.
Give me some insight in that sense, because obviously people only know you from esports. What were you doing when you were working in basketball before?
So I was coaching basketball, and I was taking a master's degree in IT.
Nice.
And that's kind of like goes into that goes into how you started the show, I guess, which is my license in the university is still on pause for like 7-8 years.
Right,
and
you can't go back to ever get it, right?
Because like the ideally was initially was like, okay, I'll try this, see how it works, and it always worked. So it's still like on pause for 7-8 years, and it's just whenever I'm done, I'll probably that will be the thing that I'll want to go back to. And now I guess that hopefully I'll be doing that only when my kid is also doing it. It would be kind of fun that we are finishing the degree at the same time, because I don't know if I want them to be in esports.
Sure, who can, right? I mean, that's actually the problem. I say the same thing, mate. I wouldn't ever tell anyone to come into the industry. I like it, but I don't know if they could handle it. Maybe they'd get wrecked. Maybe they'd be one of the casualties, right? What about, is there something about coaching in general then? What draws you to it? Because I know actually a lot of people go the other way, mate. They're just like a nerd who loves League, or they think, oh, these players, they need my help to figure out the game. What draws you to coaching? What's so interesting about coaching?
I mean, it's not only the competition, because that one you can only also get as a player, but also the feeling of having an impact in people's lives. That's always something, especially in basketball, that became very, very important, because I think that on traditional sports you can form people much better than you can form people in esports. But I always have that goal. I always have the goal to have a positive impact. I'm very focused now. I mean, initially, obviously, I just wanted to coach because I came from coaching, and this was something that I liked, a game that I liked. But after it started, as soon as I started investigating as well more into coaching, I started to be a bit more knowledgeable about things outside of the game that I can help the players do, and a bit more knowledgeable about performance. And to me, that's something that I always want to transmit, and I feel like I'm starting to enter on an age then that I start to see the young players as like the next generation instead of being my generation,
Right.
and that's giving also a new perspective on coaching. And like I just really like when I have a positive impact on not only in game but especially in their lives as well.
I saw that actually your first team, even though you can look elsewhere, was a Portuguese team. You're working with a team called For the Win. Was it a kind of an amateurish setup back then? What was it like? Because if people don't know, this is in 2016. And in 2016, I would say back then, even when people were listed as coach in like the Riot system, because you used to get that stipend, the only real people who were coaches was like, you know, maybe like Reapered on Cloud9 or something like. But I know in Europe especially, a lot of people, it was more like they're just a demo analyst or they just manage you in general. What was it actually like in this team? What was the setup?
I think in that team I was getting 25 euros a month. I think that's myself. And here and there we would get like a keyboard from I think at that time the sponsor was, I think it was Razer actually. So we would get like, I mean, it's not bad, right? Razer, but we would get like a keyboard or a headset or something like that. But I mean, it was fun. I remember we went to DreamHack. Our opponents in that time were Kick, which I ended up joining after.
The biggest Portuguese team, of course.
Yeah. And I remember that on the first DreamHack that we went together, we were so jealous because we took a 14 hours bus ride and they went by plane, and it was just we felt like so bad about it and stuff. But looking back at it, it was actually like so amateur. We would play only after school, like at 7 or something. We do 2 or 3 games. Would only be on TeamSpeak. There wasn't even Discord at that time. It didn't exist. Tournaments were like kind of for fun. The main objective was go for lols and stuff like this. Yeah, it was very, very different.
The funny thing is, people might know, obviously, you actually worked with the people who were Giants, who, with a slightly different roster, eventually became the LCS team when it was EU LCS. And if I read out this roster, it's actually ridiculous because everyone's going to know all these names. It's just the joke is they weren't yet the people you know. So there was... The Antonio and Ruin were the top laners. So it was that Korean guy, and obviously the Antonio, actually the joke is plays in the LEC right now. We finally got in. Then you had Gilius was the fucking jungler. You had Jiizuke, and then basically it's the rest of Giants and later Vitality. It was Mini Trupax, who obviously later became what's his name? Attila, and then you had Jactroll, of course, right?
Yeah.
This is obviously already people know this core eventually gets in, and all these players one day play in the big leagues, etc. How did you get such a skilled set of people right out the gate?
It was actually really funny because so we placed quite poorly first split of Spanish League. We didn't have Gilius and Jiizuke only joined quite at the end. And we had the Korean guy called Miracle that was supposed to be kind of like the coach of the coaches. Giants came with this theory that they wanted a Korean to try to put the Korean ways on us. Obviously, it didn't work because he entered and said that people could only go to sleep at 4 a.m. and they had to wake up at 10 a.m. and play solo queue. And that in Europe, like at least in that time, that was like a bit also amateur. It didn't work too well. And then on that split, in Spring Split, Giants lost their LCS slot. And they wanted Miracle to be their coach of EU Challenger Series. But he had a problem with visa. So then he couldn't be the coach. And his roster was like some Korean mid that was in NRG, I think, at that time in North America, and like a Korean support and stuff like this. And he didn't want anyone from that team. And then he had the problems with visa, so they're like, I guess we just take this guy that is here already anyway. And I remember the first conversation they had with me is like, don't feel any pressure. The only thing we want is like, we just don't want to lose the slot. And I remember telling them that I wanted to stick with Jiizuke, I wanted to stick with Mini Trupax, because with Mini Trupax or with Attila, I came already from both teams, For the Win and Kick from Portugal. And then I knew that Joe and Antonio at that time did not have a good level. So we found Jactroll. Gilius joined us for Spanish League kind of already, and Ruin was in SK at that time, and they failed to qualify 2 or 3 times in a row, and I think they lost their Challenger Series spot. So then we ended up getting Ruin. And I remember like all the prognostics were last place in Challenger Series. And we just got first place, and then we cruised through the qualifier. So I mean, I guess we got those quality players the same way that people are getting quality players now, and then they get surprised, is that people just don't look enough.
Sure. Let me ask about some of these people then. So obviously this is like quite a while ago. We're talking like 7 years ago now. Who was Gilius back then? That's actually when he'd even been in a million teams already, I think, right? Who was Gilius?
Yeah, Gilius. Who was he like?
As a player, as a person, what was he like?
I mean, Gilius is actually. I don't think he changed much. Like he's a very funny guy. I do think that he has like very extremes in his personalities, but I think that team needed that. That team needed kind of like the extreme of. He would be kind of like the guy that would take all the shots, and with a team with a lot of like rookies, I would say, because Jiizuke and Attila were rookies, so was Jactroll, and I mean Ruin, in a way, was also a rookie. He was taking all the shots. He was putting like his chest in front of every bullet, and he was always very exaggerated. But not only he would bring a good mood to the team, but he would also. It's kind of weird to explain, but he would just make sure that some of the exaggerations that he said would just make people laugh. And I know that he was serious, but people always thought that he was joking. And that
put it this way, one thing about him that is not a troll. When people think he's like trash talking like Conor McGregor, right? What they don't know is he does that as part, like he makes it like epic in public, but privately, one thing, in a way, I actually fuck with this dude. He actually is the guy who's like delusional. Like he actually thinks you can win every tournament. You can win you can qualify the worlds and everything, right?
That's the thing that I couldn't find the word, but yeah, pretty much like he was the delusional guy, right? So like everyone of every player of Schalke was getting more than our whole team together, and he was like, "These guys are just fucking noobs," and it's just like it will win and we will stomp them and it will be easy, and the confidence as well for stage games, right? He would come for a stage game and he would just say, "Guys, last night I did not jerk off. It's free win." It's like how can you correlate both, you know?
Sure.
But for him, it's just, and he would say it with a confidence that you are just forced to believe it, you know. And I mean, it was nice for that team. I think it was really nice.
One of the other players I want to ask about is actually Ruin, the Korean top laner, who people will remember years later was obviously playing in like CLG and stuff like that, LCS. What's funny is this, Guilhoto, is he actually technically, if you look it up, the last couple of years was like coaching like the academy of T1. And the reason why that's insane to me is because this guy was a maniac. Like, this is one of those top players who thinks he's solo queue, you know what I mean? Give us some thoughts on this play. He seemed like a really crazy guy.
I mean, he was not your typical Korean, I would say. He was very crazy, and he was also very, like, I don't know, it was weird because his work ethic was quite bad. I would say. Like, he was one of the players that would stay until 3 a.m. playing PUBG, I think at that time was PUBG. And sometimes I would have to turn off the electricity at the house because I had to force him to go to bed at some point. But he was very, even though his work ethic I don't think was the best compared to at least the Koreans that I coached after him. He was always one of the most selfless players that I've had. Which is weird because when we got him, I thought that he would be this Fiora Jax player.
He kind of was years later, but your team was playing at the Nar and all that sort of shit.
Our team, he was just playing Cho'Gath. He was basically at the time champion. A better version of Antonio.
Right.
You know, and he would do it very happily, and he would like win lanes with it to most top laners, and he also had a really good relationship with Jiizuke. And I remember one time, like, I asked him at the end, like, why was he so willing to do it? And his answer was basically, our team was winning, so why wouldn't I? You know, and that to me, it's like,
legit, yeah.
I was very surprised because Jiizuke was a rookie, Attila was a rookie, but he was just okay with, they have the carries and I just have to enable them and we'll win that way. As long as we keep winning, he obviously wouldn't mind because we kept doing it until going to LCS. So, yeah.
And then obviously, look, if I were like not only good players but amazing personalities, I always thought Jiizuke, I think he should be in LEC right now, mate. He's one of those guys where if I ever had one of those bad teams at the bottom of the league, I'd just sign this guy immediately. Like, he's, first of all, it's just box office, and then he's also just, he's going to actually, the way he plays is so ridiculous. He's also just going to win some games randomly too. Like, this guy's just, for me, he's just a natural talent, Guilhoto. What do you think of Jiizuke?
he's talented wise, he's just incredible. Like the amount of games that he would turn around by himself, people don't know this, but one of the first games of Humanoid in Spanish League was against Jiizuke, and Jiizuke was diving him 1v1 with Oriana. It was at level 3, I think. At level 3, he's diving him 1v1. 2 games later, Humanoid was benched from Mad Lions, and they got Nemesis. Was something like that. He was just so incredibly talented. I don't know what happened after EG. I know that he had like a period in K Corp and stuff, but I'm not sure if he couldn't find a team or that he just didn't find a good enough team in his eyes to go. Because I do think that Jiizuke, to me, once he reached a certain level, it's really hard for him to go a bit back down. And I know that America can be very traumatic, I guess, especially for players. So I could see that he just wanted to be in a team very comfortable, and maybe he couldn't find that. I'm not sure if he could be in LEC right now because of how much time he was out. But to be fair, I don't know how many better mid laners talent-wise there are in ERL and in LEC too. So I mean, it really depends on his willingness and how his current level is. But talent-wise or pure talent-wise, there's very few players that ever matched him. Like he was one of the few that would go toe-to-toe in lane with Caps throughout his whole career.
Yes.
It's crazy.
And then actually, I have a complicated play. There's going to be a few throughout your career. So you're going to have to do what all coaches do on my shows. You've got to have to play a bit of defense for this guy and give me your thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Because as a coach, you know...
I mean, if I didn't like him, I will...
I
didn't like every player that I coached.
But put it this way, in this one, I actually sort of low-key want you to give me what the good side of this player is. So you will know this because of, like... some bad hints in LEC, and especially like I think some streamers didn't like him. A lot of people think Jactroll was just trash now, and they're sort of like, oh, he's a bum. And in fact, when he just came in at like, I can't remember what team it was, he even came in at the end on, but it was like, oh, it was actually XL with Upset or whatever. When everyone just said like he was bad.
It was with me, I think. Origin with me.
Yeah, Origin. Yeah, you're right. We brought him in after the Destiny period. Yeah, right. Yeah. Everyone obviously hard flamed this guy the whole time, right? What were the upsides of him? What weren't people seeing? Like I heard, for example, he was maybe like a scrim demon or something. What was this guy like?
In scrims, he was really good, actually. Yeah, he was for sure better in scrims than in officials. But I don't think he was bad in officials. I think that he had some champions that were very good, like Thresh, for example, and his laning was good. But he was very kind of like lost in the map a lot of the times. And the problem is that I don't know if there are actually like good supports in EU outside of like 3 or 4. So players like Jactroll, which mechanically shouldn't be on top or even map-wise shouldn't be on top, can stay for a lot more.
Right.
And it's not undeserved, like as a player can be bad compared to other roles, but maybe he's just good on the support role. Like because supports, I think the difference in level is too big that some players like Jactroll can survive. But compared to the other players that I had, at least on that Giants team, he was probably the most forgettable, I would say. Like he was good. He was winning us games with Thresh and stuff. But what he would offer to the team at that time was for sure less than at least the big 3. I guess the Jiizuke, Gilius, Attila. But I think it was also because for him, he was like a real rookie. Like when I say a real rookie, is like Attila and Jiizuke played in Spanish League, which at that time and now was one of the bigger leagues. Ruin played in Challenger Series before, and so did Gilius in NA. But Jactroll came straight up from solo queue. Like it was just a solo queue player. So I think like I'm not sure if I'm doing justice to him, but on that team he was like the most forgettable, and I think it was because of that for sure.
One detail about the Superliga before we move on to the LEC period is I actually low-key feel like you basically are the reason why the Mad Lions team became the greatest European... Because basically they had the same lineup, guys, except they had Jiizuke instead of Crownshot at this time. And when they played this final, they lost in 5 games. They just brought Crownshot afterwards and won like everything for like the whole fucking year, right? What was this match like? Because obviously that was a mega hype team. It was Nemesis and fucking Selfmade and all these guys.
It was really weird. That match was really weird. I think we were clearly better because they were going through the period that we went at the start with like all rookies getting to know, etc. But we played that finals knowing that we wouldn't be on the same team after. So like it was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks that we knew already that they were all going to Vitality and that I was going to Schalke. So our scrims were a bit. We didn't want to give as much information anymore to each other. And I even invited Yamato to some of our scrims so that he could get the head start and stuff like this. But it was weird because we knew we weren't a team anymore. But at the same time, it was also what the talk was about after we lose the fourth game. Because like there's no shot that we are gonna end our journey with a loss. And we started that series 2-0, switching with Rune and Antonio, and then they caught us to 2-2, and the fifth game was a crazy game. It was one of the best series that I've seen in Superliga for sure. And there was a bot gap. Yeah, I mean I think it's like very fair to assume that Crown Shot compared to Jeskla, it's not really a comparison. And after that, I think it was like instantly on the year after that, EU Masters was created. They won both splits in LVP, and they just became very dominant. And then I think all of them went to LEC. Was there someone that? Oh, Falco didn't.
Yeah, he's the only one didn't. Everyone else did though. Yeah, even Willem did. If people forget he was on SK.
Yeah.
What about when you came to Schalke? If people don't know, like, even though the first split was a bit dodgy, you got a fucking pretty good roster, mate. Like, if people remember, basically, you had the same roster that later became the one that made the summer finals. It's just at the time you didn't have amazing, because this is the story we're going to get to later. You had Pridestalker. So let's start there, right? Pridestalker is a player that is an enigma to me, Guilhoto, because the guy must have been on about, like 5 different teams. Like, he's been in LCS, he's been in LEC. Everyone keeps giving him a try. So they're obviously seeing something, but it's the same story every time. I feel like he gets like one split and then they kick him on. So what's the deal with this guy?
I mean, he's very good mechanically. He can only play carry junglers, but at least in Schalke when he was a rookie, he was, man, I don't want to throw him under the bus like that, because he's a nice guy, but he was having some hard time learning things.
Okay.
And he had some really weird takes. Stuff like, I remember one time he said, I asked him, like, you're coming so tired to scrims, what is going on? And he told me that he accidentally took a coffee at 11:30, so then he couldn't sleep
at night. Yeah.
And like, how is that accidental?
I know.
It's so some stuff. I mean, then it was things like I told him one time about that he just needs to queue with Sejuani to his carries to stop Zac jump, because it was Sejuani Zac, but he thought that Zac would jump over him, but there's no like height in league.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
So it was like weird, but talent-wise and mechanically, it was really good. I think he's just like not really built for competitive, I would say.
Okay.
But then he did like a really good split in LFL, if I'm not mistaken, with BK Rogue. But after that he joined Barca and they got last place, and now I don't know what he was doing. But Schalke was a funny period because it was between Schalke and Fnatic. I got
wait a minute, you could have been a Fnatic. You could have just had like that fucking Caps and Reckless Mega Super team.
Well, yes and no, because Schalke was, so this was me as a rookie coach going to LEC, right? And in Schalke was with Krepo. And even though I wouldn't be the head coach, and I wasn't the head coach per se in Spring Split, in summer it changed a bit.
Okay.
But in Spring Split I wasn't, but I was going to be on stage. But in Fnatic I would be with Dylan Falco and Youngbuck, and I didn't have the guarantee that I would be on stage.
Oh, it would be all three of you at the same time. So it was there and you, right? I see.
Yeah, and to me, like, I knew that going in, the most important is that I had some type of visibility, so I had to be on stage no matter what. So that's why I ended up going with Schalke, and I was happy with my decision.
By the way, as you say, one of the silly details about this Schalke team is, look, because of the things we all know about, we don't have to get into it now, that happened with Krepo. Krepo went from being not only a great broadcaster, but he's kind of like catering. You can do whatever you want. You could be a coach, you could be a streamer, you could be on broad. Just someone, everyone loves their knowledge, everyone thinks they're really clever. And so even though he had that whole incident, obviously he was able to stay working in the industry. People don't know he works at SK now. He's like the GM that built that team, etc.
Yeah.
So in this team, he was the coach, but he was Boris, the coach, Boris.
Yeah, he actually played our first game, because Upset was feeling sick. And he played as support and Vandre the carry. Wow, that was crazy.
Give me some thoughts though, because like, did he live up to the hype? Did he have like the interest in mind for the game and stuff? What was he like?
I think, more than the mind for the game. Obviously he was like good about the game, but it was like, it's compared to other coaches, I guess. It was like nothing special, but he was good. But I think he was one of the first ones and one of the ones that I learned the most about structure. I think that's where he was like really, really good. And I think that a lot of it came from the broadcast, like super organized, had like good rules and good insights about performance because he was also a player. One of the first people inside of the industry that I realized that is giving a lot of importance to the image, to streaming,
Branding
Twitter,
stuff,
which at that time was a much bigger topic than it is now.
People used to literally recruit for teams based on that, right?
Yeah. So he was for sure someone that I learned a lot on the performance and the competition side, more than in the game side.
Right.
In fact, I think I was brought also mostly for the game side, but it was for sure someone that taught me a lot, at least from a start of a career, of something that I never really had a good experience with. I had it with basketball, but it's very, very different. I think performance when you can use when you can kind of like put people on the bench versus performance with like you are the team and this is it. We have to be with each other type thing. So Krepo is for sure, which makes them, I think, a much better GM. Because I think that this is actually really important for a GM. He's really smart about how different types of personalities and different types of strengths of gameplay will kind of correlate with each other.
Since, like I say, the next split is the one everyone remembers because you went to the finals and you actually played the Fnatic team that you could have joined. And this is the one where the one change was Amazing came in as jungler. And what's funny is he would even tell you this, even though Amazing used to be the mechanical jungler, this was the point in his career where it was like he had no hands and he was just using his brain was the premise. And the whole point was to do comms and to fill gaps in the team and stuff. By the way, I think this is actually a genius roster move because again, like no one would pick this guy if you were starting a team, but if you needed to fix something like the jungle is a problem with the map or whatever, it sounds like the perfect guy to bring in.
I think he's like kind of similar to Gilius in terms of the energy and like the not necessarily the aggressiveness inside of the game, but the kind of like the hot blood, I guess.
He likes to argue about stuff, right? If he thinks he's right.
Yeah, of course. But that's good. I think a team needs that. A team needs someone that is not scared of getting mad, of like causing arguments and stuff like this. And I think Amazing was really good at it. I still think that he's a player that should only be on a team for like a split, because it's very easy to tend to go like onto the too much area, and when it goes onto the too much, it starts being counterproductive. But during that split, he for sure helped us a lot. Mechanically, he was like very far, but it's fine. It was tank jungler time, so it didn't matter too much. I could actually draft like I was doing with Giants. I had Chachi and Amazing, so go ahead, tank jungle, tank top, and Upset and Nukeduck you guys tried to carry. And it worked out all the way to the finals. I think Meta also helped us quite a bit. But for sure, Amazing had a good impact on it.
If you go from the first split, like there's some, you're figuring out the lineup still, you first split at LEC even, you're working your way in, to go to the finals must be epic in the very next split. It's got to feel like the storybook, right? Like the movie. Give me some thoughts on going all the way to the finals and then playing Fnatic.
And Madrid, and the finals were in Madrid. Perfect. Like, to me, it was like the Spanish, at that time, there wasn't a lot of Spanish people there, and since when I went to the scene, I was very vocal. I would speak Spanish and stuff, and I managed to gather a bit of a fan base, mostly all for Spain. In Madrid, it was crazy. There was also like in Madrid a chance for us to qualify to Worlds if Misfits beat Vitality, but Max Lord decided to pick Graves and Evelyn. So that was not possible. But I remember that we knew that they were favorites, and we spent a lot of the time practicing this anti-Akali comp. Akali had just been reworked. It was OP. It was at the time that the W would not be revealed by towers. It was something incredibly OP, and we just designed this comp that the whole purpose was to counter Akali. And my assumption with that strategy was, okay, Akali is so broken that they will try to play it 2 times. And then we can get 2 wins. But they only played it first game, and then they perma-banned it throughout the whole series, and we ran out of steam. But it was like Caps and Reckless, peak Reckless, actually.
Yes, that was the best season, in my opinion, yeah.
The start of a really good Caps. Soas that hurt his hand, but then Bwipo was actually subbed after game 1, and they put Soas. The only game that actually Bwipo, I messed with him when we went on TL, saying that he lost the finals too, because he only played game 1 and
he was 0-1 to you, yeah.
Yeah. And then Soas came in, and like that team just functioned so well, and that's why they made World Finals. It is like we fought the best we could.
Is that one of those times where, look, it's still your first year. Do you actually, if you lose a match like that, is it one of those ones that haunts you and you keep thinking like, is there something I could have done or whatever? Do you look at their team? It was one of the best teams ever. Was there a match that was okay to lose?
No, I don't think there's ever a match that's okay to lose. I mean, to me, there was not a single best of 1, best of 0 even. Like, we can be playing fucking dices. It's never going to be okay to lose. In fact, I'm here after a loss, and that's why I'm a bit tilted, you know? Okay. Because, I mean, it's even 8 years after, you know, I think that when you start coping with losses, that's when you lost the love of competition. In my head, and this is just how I see competition, it's not about being right or wrong, it can never be okay to lose to whatever team. You can be a random, like in EU Masters, right? You can be last seed playing against the first seed. It can never be okay to lose. You know, and that's why certain speeches of people trying to, especially coaches trying to cope with the loss, I don't like it. But that's just my way of seeing competition. Of course, you don't have to go like hard on the players because you lost. That's also bad. You should be kind of like the Rock, making sure that, especially if you have games after, that people can recenter and stuff. But individually, as a competitor, you have to always look at what you could have done better. Because I don't give a shit if Fnatic was World Cup finals. You know, I also lost the finals to a G2 that won MSI, and then was to fight. Like, those were the 2 finals in Europe that I lost. And I am sure that if I would go back in time and coach them now, I would have won the finals. You know, this is just like how I have to think to compete.
In this team, obviously, you had some very interesting names, so I want to ask about a bunch of them. Let's just start, though, we'll start with Vizicsacsi as top lane.
Yeah.
Because what's funny is, when I did an interview with him years later, when he was going to do that comeback, like a couple of years ago, dude, he told me one of the craziest things ever, because I was going to do that thing I actually love to do for players like him, where when you think of players who play the great weak side game, you think of like Odoamne, Impact. Yeah. What you want to tell them if you're like a real fan of the game is like, mate, I really respect that you did that, you know, like you understand like to sacrifice. And he basically sort of told me, like, I regret it. I actually wish I'd like asked to be the carry and I shouldn't have like sacrificed to. Yeah, he actually had sort of the opposite take. So in your team, mate, I always thought he played this role fabulously. Like he was doing, like you say, if you have someone like Nukeduck and fucking Upset, you want this guy to be the weak side. It's perfect, isn't it?
I mean, to me, it was good. I think that him specifically, he could play more than tanks, but he was only 2 champions. I think his Rumble and his Gangplank were really, really good. I think that it wasn't the metaphor for it, but I mean, this guy is just like, we are playing against Schalke in playoffs, game 5, and he's just like mumbling, looking at the champion and saying, what skin of Maokai am I going to pick for this game? Because we were doing that. Odoamne was picking Gnar, and we would just pick Maokai into it, and we wouldn't care, and he would win lane, and he was like such a great tank player. Even now, so now I have a rookie top laner named Carlson with 18 years old, and I still told them, like, if you want to learn someone because of like work ethic and all of that, go to Chachi. Now they talk every day, and I can still see Chachi with the same thing that I said at the start, which is like this you kind of like embrace a lot this younger generation, you know, and you want to teach them, and you see them like you see their growth as part of your success as well. And I can see Chachi doing that, and he does beautifully. And the time that he was on Mad Lions as a positional coach for top for sure did wonders, because what I'm seeing, the way that he's helping my top laner now as well, is just like it's of someone that is one of the best genuine person or that I've ever met in esports. Like, Chachi is just like 10 out of 10.
And then obviously I have to ask about Nukeduck, because not only is he this like great figure in European legend, he's probably like the best mid lane ever to win LEC and all that jazz, you know. But crucially, he was with you for 3 years across all these different teams, so you must have a special connection with him.
Yeah. I mean, we are really good friends. Even now that he's in FlyQuest, I remember before going there was an opportunity, but I guess I couldn't really like choose, I guess, but there was an opportunity that he would come with me as well to TL. And I mean, it's just, I learned so much from him, and I think he learned a lot from me too. Like, it was just a very good growth together. We knew that after the Schalke off season that we had both the option of staying at Schalke, but it was the starter of franchise, so there was a lot of new teams coming in, and our goal was just to stick together and try to build a roster that would fit with the way that we would see the game, because we were seeing it very well. I had insane trust on him to pull any champion, and I always liked to do drafts where I can just flex a lot of things. So my relationship with Nuke was just of mutual respect and like very big admiration and friendship throughout the 3 years that we were together.
The interesting thing about his career to me is people who are just sort of almost like the equivalent of the 14-year-old football fan on Twitter who just thinks Messi's the best and no one else is allowed to be good. Those people, because he didn't win the trophy, try and make it like he sucked, right? Whereas there's two things I have to say. One, he did play right in the prime of Caps and fucking Perks, guys. Like, they're pretty good players. They're going like world semi-finals all the time, etc. And then also, even though he definitely had hands, the thing I always thought was interesting is if you ever ask teammates or coaches, or even actually some of the mid laners I just said, they all say this guy had like a really great mind for the game as well. Like, he's the guy who understood the side lane and how you move around the map and what the junglers like you say, he wasn't just a player, right?
No, it was really, really smart. And it was one of the few players that I've always had, like, that I always welcomed to like share reviews with me. You know, like I always wanted him to say what he would think. The way that he argues, I think it's also good. At least like it matches with the way that I argue. So like every argument that we had, always felt that we would get to a good conclusion.
Right.
And in game as well, even though he wouldn't speak as much because of obviously the mid lane role, you can't just like be micromanaging people. Like, he would come with great ideas, especially in Schalke. We had a lot of games where we would win through backdoor, and it was mostly just Nukeduck micromanaging and calling into in game. I think that though the main difference between him and Caps was just kind of like I think if Nukeduck would care about competition a bit more, he would challenge Caps a lot more. Because, like, he reminds me of, like, I don't know, in a way, he was just someone that would just like the game, and he would play the game because he liked it. More than, like, he wants to be the champion, you know?
Right.
So I think that if he had more of, like, and it's like I can't really blame him. It's like either you have it or not, and like 2 or 3 players maximum in our league have it. But if he was like, I will be the best to ever play this game, he would have won championships, I think.
Right. What about, obviously in this team, you had like still sort of baby Upset. This wasn't the Upset later that, you know, but it's funny because all the other teams, people tried to sell that idea. Ego, and he asked for everything. In this team, I'm sure he was just a kid, right? So what was it like working with young Upset?
I mean, not really a kid. He was the commanding voice in bot lane.
Oh wow, okay.
It's crazy because Vander was coming from like recently a semi-finals at Worlds.
Yep.
But like that's what I think made Upset such a great AD carry. Is like he doesn't give a shit if it's Vander that's next to him. He's the AD carry. If he wants resources, if he wants to base, if he wants to play in a certain way, he will tell his support what he wants. And to me, he was kind of the one that put in my head the idea of what I want in an AD carry. Like, and I always say, I want an AD carry that is cocky. I want an AD carry that has ego. I think you have to have ego, and you have to be cocky to be a good AD carry. You know, you have to be willing to be in positions where you can die, but you have the confidence that you will dodge the skill shots. You know, that's the best way that you will deal damage. That's the best way that's the way that most the best AD carries play. And Upset, even at that age, was playing that way. And in scrims, like, this guy was so insane. Mechanically, he was so insane. And even on his first, I mean, I think his first split was not good, but his second split, when he got a bit of like that jitters of the competition, I think only Reckless could match him. Like, there was no one that was even come close. And at that time, Hans Samo was already in the league, even though he wasn't having his best years. Attila was kind of like always trying to create a rivalry with him, but quality-wise, it's like,
course,
you know, it's yeah, it wasn't really close, but this guy's talent was so insane. Especially, I think more in Schalke than in Origin, but in Schalke was just something phenomenal.
I know what you mean on the Attila one. Like, that was a bit forced, because the problem is that's like listen, maybe that's like an Audi, but versus like a Lamborghini. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, bro. You know, there's levels to this game. You know? Yeah, true.
But I guess Attila bit Uzi.
That's true. That did happen. That really happened. It did really happen.
Yeah.
What about since in this team, basically some of the players obviously later reunited. Like, you got Nukeduck and Upset years later in Origin. Obviously, there was the skip between. What was it like to reunite with Upset later? Because if you remember, that was the year where, because at the end the team came last, even though I always tell people, we'll get to that split in a minute, but that's the one where it's like, that's the only split where there's no bad teams, guys. That's the one where like everyone's like one game off or whatever. And so famously in that team, the two people that get like almost bullied by fans is obviously Alphari and Upset, because since they haven't won, the haters they came 10th. It's like, bro, I'm not even joking. If you polled all the players, they'd be like, they're still like top 3 at their role. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that aspect? Because people often say about Upset, look, it's become a thing now, hasn't it? He's come 10th. He must suck. Like, what do you think of that?
I mean, I think that team was very poorly built, and it's obviously my fault, because like I built that team, and the Fissure kind of gave me almost. I mean, we didn't have budget for a support.
Sure.
But like that off season was insane. So for those that don't know, right? The Astralis was about to join the stock market, so our budget was not like other teams' budget. It wasn't like,
I heard
okay, we can stretch a bit, or no. It was like, this is the limit. Period. You can't pass like €2 more than this. So the way that we got, I really wanted Xerxes and Upset to that team because they were free agents, and in my head it would make a lot of sense. So the way that we did was like, we got Upset first, but then I lowered my salary, and Nukeduck lowered his salary, and Alphari lowered his salary, so that we could get Upset at the start. But then for Xerxes, Upset lowered a bit their salary, and then I think I lowered mine a second time, so that we would get Xerxes, and then we had exactly 60k, which is the minimum to get a support. And at that time, I remember there was Kaiser and some rookie supports, but they were getting offers of 200k.
Sure.
So then we had to go for Destiny, because I remember watching a scrim while I was helping Giants in New Masters, and he was like, good for the price, you know. And I thought that like the other 4 would compensate in a way, but I think that I just built that roster wrong. It was also kind of like the first roster that I had probably the first, and was it the only one? Probably the only one that I had kind of like the power to build. So I learned a lot about roster construction there. The problem with that roster is that like the styles just didn't match at all. Upset and Alphari have a really hard time playing together. Alphari is obsessed with lane. He knows a lot about lane. He's incredibly talented. Probably the most talented player in pure talent. Is probably the most talented player that I've coached. But they are both requiring a lot of attention, requiring a lot of like jungle presence. But Xerxes is also a jungler that really likes to full clear and do things on his timers and play to invade enemy jungler and stuff like this. So the team just wasn't functioning, and we couldn't really find the way to play the game. The best way that we found to play the game was legit. I think thanks to Riot Games that tanks mid were enabled, so we would just play Thorin and Karthus, and like Nukeduck would just become the player that would kind of sacrifice, and okay, it's fine guys, I'll just roam both sides, and that's it. But the team was just poorly constructed, and it was like we started good. I remember that we started on, I don't know if I can I talk about this? Maybe I can. We started like we started well. We went to a semifinals in playoffs with Fnatic on the first split, but then we got the call. It was like the COVID time and stuff, so we got the call a couple of hours before, saying that we would have to reduce our salaries because of COVID.
Oh yeah, again, if people don't know, Astralis just did that in general. Even asked the CS players to reduce.
Yeah.
They were asking everyone, I think. Yeah.
Like, and the language was a bit weird because it was 2 hours before the best of 5, and the language was something in the line.
Oh, I know the story. I think I've even told this story, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Here's the story. It wasn't it just that they sort of said something like, "Look, if you don't, we're gonna have to fire like these people over here."
Yeah.
Like someone in the office or someone mad, like just right there before the match. So it was kind of like, put it this way, what you're sort of saying is, they didn't expressly say do it or else, but they were sort of like guilting you into it a bit, right?
Yeah. So, and that before a best of 5 was
That's
weird,
wild,
but that team is like, once we start losing, it's like, it's a team that is very, or it's like the environment was a lot fast on raising issues. And I was with Jack Case at that time. And then at some point they also fired him, but they didn't got me one. They got me AOD in summer to replace Jack, to replace Jack, which was someone that I was very close with, even though, I mean, I'm not going to defend the tweets that Jack made before he got fired and stuff, but like they could have at least consulted me and stuff before. And after they got me AOD, but at that time AOD was kind of like more of a burden than a helper because he was just put in there. So every review is him asking me 10 questions about,
right.
Is this a team play? Is this something that we talked before? And like, it's kind of like a burden. And when all of that is together with the fact that after we beat G2, we went like 0-6 or 0-7. I think it was just like a big spiral that made us go 10th. But individually, the players were still good. It was just not a good match at all. And obviously, like there was a lot of things that, especially I could have done better. I think that I could have like let the Jack thing affect me less. I think I could have be more assertive on a way to play and brute force it. I think I was like too passive and too different than what I am now. And I let a lot of things happen that I shouldn't have. Behaviors of players or reactions of the players, or not being the one that took kind of like, for example, we come off after a loss and I need to be the one that speaks first to kind of like set the tone of how we go forward. I think I wasn't doing that in that team. It was also my first experience with a team like that. So like I blamed myself for a while, but now I don't anymore. Now I'm more of like, I think I'm the best coach I've ever was right now, and all of it has to be because I took lessons from those experiences instead of like just blaming the fact that they called us and we lost, or blaming that I guess my players just didn't get along, that's why we lost. No, I took a lot of responsibility and a lot of lessons from those years. So in a way, I'm still happy that the 10th place happened, if that makes sense.
Everyone needs a support network, and mine is, of course, my Patreon community, the Scrominati, who in many ways, they're the Sonny to my Cher, saying, I got you, babe. So this video and all the others on my channel were kindly supported by the following names: Ahmed Haju, Mac Pugnaccio Rakula, Adam Tomlin, Animosity, Jensen Go, Tosh, Toucan, and you know it. Jerky's Minion, my main man, always going to be referenced, one of the best patrons of all time. Would you like to ask a question in my AMA? Maybe you want to suggest a topic or a guest to say on my channel? Do you want teasers, find out who the upcoming Reflections and Talk to Thorin interviews are? Maybe you want to do one of those long discussions where you get to set the topics we talk about. Well, if any of these or others appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Scluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.